one secret to transforming your life and work might not be what you expect. People always ask me, what made me start my business? Well, welcome. I'm Chloe Temple, the founder of Popp and the ultimate offsite, and today I'm sharing how this all started. This is a bit of a different episode. It's an unprompted, unscripted and unedited conversation with my good friend James. Together we explore the journey of finding each other's why and how it was a complete game changer in transforming my entire life and my career. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek's work, then you'll know exactly what I mean. If not, your why is your unique purpose. And for me, this was the start of Popp. It's now something I support individuals and businesses with finding every single day. So if you've ever felt lost or stuck in your life or career, if you've ever felt like you were here to make a difference, if you want to help your team operate with purpose, or if you're frankly just curious about what it takes to start a business, then this episode is for you. So, if you're ready, let's dive in. And we're live. Okay. Amazing. We are live. So this is a bit of a fun conversation that was about a couple of weeks ago. James told me, this is James. I'll introduce James properly in a moment. But James lives in Australia. I used to live in Australia. And a couple of weeks ago, James said to me, oh, I'm flying over to Australia. Can I come stay with you?
Flying over to England, yes.
Flying over from Australia, flying over from England. And I thought immediately, oh, what fun could it be to have a conversation, sit down and have a conversation about the origin of Popp and essentially the story of what it has taken over the last 3 years to bring what this is to life now. And essentially then I forgot about it. I forgot about it until about yesterday. He was like, let's actually do this. Yeah. He flies home tomorrow.
We may as well.
So this is a super unscripted. We haven't really had any conversations at all about what we're going to speak about, what we're going to include, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a behind the scenes of what has been an incredible 3 years. So James, this is James.
Hello,
James
everyone.
Is one of my best friends. He is, we worked together when I was working at Reckitt. James, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as Chloe said, I'm James. I worked with Chloe. We were, sort of in the same team when she joined Reckitt. Became really good friends, and we had a lot of kind of shared passions and values, as you'll kind of hear about today. We're always talking about kind of starting this like side hustle or this business together. And so I think it's actually the perfect topic for us to talk about, because it is sort of like a X-Men origin story. You get to see kind of how this all came about and evolved, because it didn't just spring up overnight. But I think I'd like to think I was one of the people there on the early parts of the journey, and to see it kind of evolve and bounce ideas off you as well. So it's really amazing and exciting to see what Popp has become. So I think it's also really incredible to kind of look back on how it all began. And I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's crazy.
I know, man, absolute madness. And to be clear, it's just me. James isn't part of Popp anymore, as much as old me would have liked him to be. But he formed such an integral part of what got me to even come to the idea of it and come to the inspiration of it. So I thought I'll invite him to have that conversation.
Very honored. So it all starts with why.
It all starts with why. Essentially, if I go back to when whilst I was at Reckitt, I had just landed my absolute dream job. So I went in to head up the category strategy team in the Australian business. And I had suddenly felt like it was everything that I had ever wanted to do, bring to life. I absolutely, coming from a buying background, what I loved most about buying was the category components of it. And it had been 9 months in the making of shaping up a perfect role, perfect team, amazing team, who I couldn't work out when I'd stepped into that role and when I thought that, I'd got everything that I had ever wanted. I couldn't work out why. I was just feeling so, like, is this it? Am I in the right place? Is this enough? Like, there was nothing external to me that I could see that was wrong. I was living by the beach in Australia. I had an amazing partner, friends like James. I was doing work that I absolutely loved, was really good at, but there was sort of something missing and I wasn't quite sure what that was. So I would basically go about and try to define, in the same way that we do with our business plans, I tried to define what was the vision for my life? What was the mission that I was on? What difference did I want to make? What change was I here to instill? And what about me could I bring that about? And I'd send James and another good friend of mine called Jess, I'd send them, vision statements. This is what I'm creating. This is what I'm creating. And they sounded really good. Like they sounded like, it's the sort of thing that if you popped into ChatGPT now and you said, like, create an amazing vision statement aligned to this, ChatGPT would sort of spit out this really well-crafted vision statement. But there was sort of something missing from the bottom of that. Like, it sort of lacked real integrity. It was sort of like when you go into a business and a team puts together a vision statement and it's just a combination of like words that the team have come up with. That was sort of, it lacked any depth or integrity as to what that was.
We got someone at the door.
We got someone at the door. Perhaps you want to answer the door. I'll carry on sharing that.
The joys of LinkedIn.
So then I decided that I was gonna, because James knows this story, then I decided that I got really into Simon Sinek's work around Start With Why. And I decided, well, actually, I want to explore this a little bit deeper. And okay, we're gonna have to wait. I can actually hear my mum downstairs dropping off some sunglasses. So hopefully she vanishes away quite quickly and we can get back to this live. It is the magic of LinkedIn Live. You cannot know what's going to happen. But essentially, it was a really interesting period of my life. And I see this so much with clients as well, where they can't quite work out what's missing and what that gap is. So I was exploring the Simon Sinek work around Start With Why. I worked out too. Was it my mum?
It was your mum. She's very mortified.
It was my mum. We could all be mortified together. It's fine.
She was like, we're actually doing the LinkedIn Live now. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, we carry on. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I got really interested in Simon Sinek's work, found out about the concept of why as like this deeper, if anyone's not familiar with a why, it's like his philosophy is, and I believe it, it's like every single person has within them a why. It's kind of what they look like at their natural best. It's their strengths. It's what brings them alive. And it's formed from really early on in their life. So from a really early age. And I learned how to find someone's why. And I turned to James and said, can I find your why? And perhaps if this goes well and we work out how to do it, can you repay the favor and explore mine? Because a why is something that you can't necessarily see for yourself.
I would say almost definitely you can't see it for yourself.
No.
No matter how obvious it seems.
Yeah.
In hindsight, after you've discovered it.
Yeah. So this essentially is the origin of Popp, is me finding my why. And maybe we talk about that experience of
yeah,
finding
for sure.
Why.
Because I think, before I had to duck out, I think like, yeah, we've all had that or I feel like I identified with that experience where you get into a job or a new role and it is your like dream role, and you know, on paper, and you're like, you've been working for like 5 years to get into this one destination role.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, why was I in a rush this whole time? And then, so I think, yeah, both of us were in roles which we enjoyed, but we didn't have that kind of satisfaction, and we were trying to work out why. And yeah, I think the why discovery is really something to like kind of peeled the curtain back and was like, oh, now I understand X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Chloe kind of, you know, approached me. I was like, I want to, you know, kind of, and Chloe had always been like she'd get our whole team to do like the Myers-Briggs tests and love languages and, you know, the full spectrum. So this was not a new, I was like, oh yeah, okay, it's a kind of, you know, another one of these things. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll do it. But then, yeah, when you start preparing for it, you realize that is very different. It's not just like a, you know, 50 multiple choice questionnaire kind of thing that you do where it spits out you're this. You really have to go back into, like you were saying before, your kind of formative, you know, memories. I think, you know, they're called core memories now, but, you know, like your formative experiences, and really dig deep into different stories. And yeah, it's quite like it is an intense process. And I think going into it, I was really worried, oh, am I going to have like the right stories? Am I going to do this correctly? But then you learn that essentially, you know, you can draw themes and meaning out of, you know, a whole lot of different stories. And some of the ones that I hadn't even prepared were ones which were most meaningful kind of things. So so I think that's where we sort of, it was kind of like this big aha moment. So yeah, I still remember the day in Bondi at your apartment on a Saturday morning. And then we did my why, and that was to create safe spaces so that people can see the best in themselves.
And truly, that is James in a sentence. Like if you've ever had the privilege to spend time with James, like this moment, like he makes me feel safe right now doing something that is quite out of my comfort zone. Usually I'm much more prepared for coming on live and doing something like this. He's like, no, let's just, you know, it's fine.
We're just chatting.
We're just chatting. Where people can appreciate the best of themselves is the kind of latter part of your why. And that's certainly how you make me feel, how I've experienced you with your team, like how you are with your team, how you are with your family, how you are with your friends. It's how did you feel about being able to see yourself in that light in sort of one sentence?
Yeah, it's like it is this huge light bulb moment, and you're like, oh, this is why I thrive in this certain scenario or circumstance. And you kind of, before that, I realized that I was very good at some things, or I could do some things with, you know, minimal effort, or like it came very easy to me, you know, like with flow.
Yeah.
But I hadn't pieced the puzzle pieces together of like, this is why I feel like, and then, so then being able to kind of distill it, if you like, down into that sentence, it became so much easier to then be like, oh, like, you know, looking retrospectively, obviously, oh, this is why, you know, but also then thinking proactively, okay, this is how I'm going to, you know, use my why, but also to, create scenarios where I can use it more. And then I remember after that, for example, we had for Mental Health Week, we had a panel, a lot of different people from different backgrounds and different stories, and some pretty, you know, like heavy, you know, material, and it was, but I went into that with a lot of confidence, because I was like, no, this is actually really me living my why, creating the safe space for the panelists.
Yeah.
Knowing when to talk and when to leave space for them as well, and affirming them in their stories as well. So I think that was really soon after the why discovery, and kind of let me live it out, and that kind of, if anything, just fully reaffirmed it, like, okay, yeah, I really want to be doing more of this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you can sort of reflect back on what are some of the some of the work things, as an example, that you've most enjoyed in your career, and what's brought that out. Usually, almost always, it will be because whatever that thing has been tapping into your why. And so I'm so glad that you enjoyed the experience. And then what you did magically,
for me to return the favor.
How did you feel about that?
I think more nervous facilitating than when you were, then doing it as a participant. Because you want to make sure that it's funny. You go into it and you're like, oh, I just really want to, do it justice and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And because, so the process, we won't go into detail, but it's a lot about like listening and then kind of drawing out themes from stories. And so you do think, you're like, oh crap, what if I can't find it? But then with you, it became like every story had like so many common themes, which you couldn't see.
It's so funny.
And you're kind of like writing in your notepad. Imagine like this whiteboard's like full of like different like bubble charts and themes, and you're like drawing it all together. But it just became so obvious. And then I like showed Chloe, and you're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I was like, how have you not like?
I remember just before James was about to close, and the way that you go about finding your why is a storytelling process. So people will reflect back on experiences from their past, the highs and the lows, and share them with your partner, who is listening and taking notes and spotting, as James says, those themes, those what Simon Sinek calls the golden thread throughout your life that shapes who you are. And what is insane is that it can be very visible to someone else, and it can't necessarily be to you. So I remember just before you were closed, you said, oh, I think I've got it. I'm pretty sure I've got it. But do you have any other kind of other stories?
Yeah, like completely different stories.
Completely different stories that you've never told before. And I was like, yes, I've got two more completely different stories. This is very different. And he's just sat there. I'm telling you, I'm going quite deep into kind of experiences. And we can do this because we're friends, and maybe you wouldn't hold that space in the same way, but he was creating a safe space for me. He's sat there laughing because you realized that the story I was telling that I thought was completely different, again, had exactly the same thread through it, that is just innately me. It's just innately me. My why, James has shared his, my why is to spark change so that we can make a difference by simply being our true selves. And seeing that in myself, as you've described for yourself, was a complete game changer. It wasn't like, this is a vision statement that I feel like I should have. This was like, oh, this is really me. When I'm at my best, I am sparking change in some sort of way. I'm challenging the status quo. I'm doing something differently. I'm disrupting something. And I'm not saying I do that all the time, but that's when I'm at my best, and that's when I feel most alive. And in order for people and myself to make a difference by just simply being me, just simply being you, and that was this light bulb had gone off in my mind as I've seen, having had the pleasure of first finding James's, and now I can't count the number of people's why that I have now found, and that I've supported each other to find, which I do with businesses, but also with individuals through the structures or the workshops and the series that I run. It's just magic for people to suddenly see themselves in a different way.
And for you, it brought to life what you were saying before in terms of those, Chat GPT style mission statements, which were very good, but it brought those to life. And then we, even worked on like slight tweaks in wording, which seemed minor, but actually, managed to hold really true, like you said, to yourself and to your own why. And I think that's really what kind of took something that was theoretical, like, I these are my aspirations and and a vision statement. Like, it really breathed life into that. And then you were like, no, actually, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then, so I suppose knowing that and kind of harnessing that, I went away with my partner Tom and our dog in just during COVID kind of times. We managed to get out into nature, and suddenly was hit with this idea, which is the idea that popp has become. And I remember sitting there for 3 days, almost non-stop, my poor Tom, just writing and writing and writing and downloading all of the vision that I had for what popp would kind of eventuate into. And I remember like just being this kind of ball of energy, almost unstoppable, and coming back and sharing it with James, who, our connection and friendship kind of up leveled with this even deeper understanding of each other. And I was like, I want to do this. I've got this amazing idea. I want to bring it to life in a way. I want to do it with you, essentially. It's funny, actually. I'm going to share this because it's like down memory lane. But
we're going through the prezzo.
No, we won't go through the prezzo. But this is so funny. So when I came back from that weekend away, I jumped onto Canva and basically was trying to kind of absorb my knowledge, absorb all of the ideas that had come up. I was calling it the hustle, because it wasn't about starting a business. It was just like, I want to live with more. At the time, it was just a side hustle or something. I want to bring more of me. So I created this kind of this vision of what that hustle would become, starting from why, and I decided I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it.
Lockdown.
During lockdown. I didn't want to do it just as me. I wanted to bring James on the ride. And so what I did was bring together and try and combine and think, okay, well, what's the combination of our two whys? So mine around sparking change so that we can make a difference, and his by being who we are, and then his around creating safe spaces so people can appreciate the best of themselves, and the hows, which I won't talk about. And out of the back of that, I then kind of culminated all of the inspiration that I was seeing, our values, everything. I put it all into this kind of mind map piece, and off the back of it spat out a couple of kind of mind maps of what it could be around empowering inspired careers through growth, through community, through unlocking innate potential, through helping other people go through the process that we've been on, which was around purpose finding, in order to kind of personally transform. And I was thinking this needed to be between possibly two different business ideas, but in order to empowering business growth. What's so interesting, and I haven't looked at this. I haven't looked at this
for a long time,
for close to 3 years, and it's wild to see that actually what popp is becoming now is sort of a combination, very, very, very similar to this that I put on this mind map way back when, and not actually looked around empowering leaders to step up into the best of themselves so they feel inspired to work. And for me, it's not around leaving your job and doing what I did and setting up your own business. In fact, I don't hugely recommend that, but so that they are able to step into their businesses and elevate the overall potential that there is in the world. So I'll take that off because we don't need to see that anymore. But it's just it was so foundational to everything else that then has come as a result.
Yeah, and I think it's like identifying, like at the very start of the process, it was clear that you had a passion and that you had a lot of energy for passion for people and their own development, holistic development, but then kind of taking the time to lay that foundation of, all right, how if I'm going to start this hustle or business, making sure that, it is something that I'm passionate about, but also most importantly that it is grounded in my why, because otherwise it's not going to last. The fire will burn out, or the passion is not enough to kind of continue to get it. But if you're living your why and transforming, or creating a company or whatever it is, a passion, a hustle around that why, that kind of gives you the longevity and the energy to keep going. Should we talk though now about, so that was like kind of working out your own offer, but then we kind of were like, okay, well, are we the only ones feeling like this? Like, in terms of elements of dissatisfaction with our career and development, like, we kind of realized that it wasn't enough to just have this, passion, this idea behind our why, but obviously there needed to be a need in a product need.
No, absolutely. So popp, that idea that dropped into my head when I was out in nature, was this concept that every single person has within themselves a pool of potential that if they only know how to dive into, they can achieve unbelievable things, experience life in just a completely different way, and with that make unbelievable things happen. And so that was very macro. It was kind of like, oh wow, and it had come out of also recognizing that I had supported through personal development, through professional development, kind of leadership development solutions, mainly personal development really, that I had managed to get myself out of over a decade of depression. And I was sat there thinking, it's not just me who can do this. It's not just me who can really lean into what's possible within themselves and have this really deep understanding what could be true if other people had that same experience, same opportunity to really create space to reflect on themselves, and so that they can show up in their lives, in their work, really feeling empowered, inspired, energized, and supported in a way. So all of that then was like, okay, right, where do we start? And I had got a little bit frustrated at the time, and I think I won't speak for you, but I certainly, and I'll speak to myself, I'd been so lucky to be invited on so many leadership development, grad schemes, training courses, high performing people courses, all of the things. To be honest, if there was ever one around, I was always the first person to have my hand up for it. I was always championing and challenging my line manager to kind of put me forward for those sorts of things. So I'd experienced loads of them.
And the problem wasn't the quantity.
The problem wasn't the quantity. The problem was, or necessarily the quality of what those experiences were. The problem was that you'd go on them and then you wouldn't apply with what you'd experienced. And there was we saw, and through an extensive amount of research, which I can talk about, that we saw some real gaps within the professional and leadership development industry that's offered within corporates, or certainly within FMCG retail corporates that we've experienced.
Yeah, and I think I definitely, I remember early on we were talking about it, how you would go on, like you said, like a very good quality training program. Like it'd be, sometimes 2 to 3 days where you're sacrificing a lot out of your work week as well, kind of putting everything on hold. But you at the time it was definitely worth it because, no matter whether it's about coaching or people development or people leading or situational leadership, it was really good stuff, and you were really fired up by the end of it. And then you kind of you get back to your desk, or working from home, and then that first email comes, and then you kind of everything goes out the window, and you would have other people who are on the course, but you would never speak to them again about the content, and you wouldn't you kind of just be like, oh, that was amazing, yeah, I found that helpful too, and then never speak to them about it again. So and this wasn't just like a one-off experience for us. Like, this usually happened with every professional development course we went on.
Yeah, there was that problem around it. So essentially it didn't last. So you'd go on it, and as James said, the workbook would go in the desk drawer, gather dust, and you wouldn't actually apply all the gems that you had, that you'd learn. It sort of was a semi-waste. It might be kind of energizing, but then does anything actually necessarily change as a result of that? And so I kind of was looking at this and saying, well, there's this lack of accountability and support to enable people, to participants of any of these sorts of opportunities, to actually put into action what they've learned out of these experiences. There were two other issues that we saw as well. So one was around that it's lasting. One was around it being inaccessible to so many people. So I was lucky because perhaps I was female, high performer, and therefore, I was willing to, really bug.
You were knocking down the door.
I was really bugging anyone. If there was some opportunity to learn, I was going to do everything that I could do to get onto that course or whatever it was, because I love to learn. So I had an advantage there, but I saw across the business, across multiple businesses that I've worked at, these individuals who, for various reasons, were being underlooked and underappreciated, undervalued, didn't even see the potential that existed within themselves, not getting access to this amazing support, the training at least. And so I saw this opportunity of it's not an invite only, you get a tap on the shoulder or you bug someone enough in order to get an invite to it, that actually anyone who chooses to embrace and step into their leadership by choosing to invest time and reflect on themselves and to grow, anyone who chooses that should have access to that level of support. So there was an accessibility piece, and the final piece was around, and you'll have experienced, we've all experienced it. You go on the things and you're not quite sure what you've got nominated for, or it's not quite what you need when you need it.
Yeah, it's good general content, but then, and you might try and draw out some aspects.
Yeah.
But then others don't seem as relevant, or you're not exactly sure, or it's not really tailored to what you need. And because and it makes sense, right, in terms of from when a larger company tries to offer professional development, it needs to try and work out how to do it in the most efficient way possible. But you weren't getting that that tailored development in terms of, okay, like in these particular challenges that I'm facing at the moment, here's some tools and some support and community behind it as well.
And businesses are applying rules of averages, of saying, okay, well, this is what most people need, so therefore this is what we'll put on. It might be a challenging conversations workshop or something that's going to meet the needs of some, but not all. And so really, I'll share this really what I spotted, or what we spotted, or what we started to realize, is that there might be an old solution, one that is accessible, not invite only, one that will last, and one that is tailored to the individual in terms of what they need, not one size fits all, not one time only. event where the thing gets left in the drawer. And so really that is what we set out, or I set out, to try and rope James into the journey of creating. Do you want to talk about?
I think as well, like the crazy, or the next kind of, if the why discovery was one light bulb moment,
Yeah.
the second light bulb moment was we like you said, we did a lot of research, and we did a lot of listening to people,
Yeah.
and like in-depth interviews, and people from all levels of management, individual contributors, people managers, all different companies as well. Even from some companies which, did put a lot of time and effort into professional development. But it was almost insane, kind of like when seeing the thread through your why discovery, that everyone, no matter who they were having these similar frustrations or feedback or experiences when it came to their professional development. It didn't matter who you spoke to. They all either, had all three of these. They were experiencing all three frustrations or elements of all of them. And we kind of went into it obviously very open-minded and kind of like, okay, well, what are people going to say? And then, everyone was saying the same thing, which was crazy.
Yeah. So we did a lot of research. I'll share this, but we did a lot of research, speaking to companies across both Australia and the UK, or employees from these companies within retail and FMCG. We did some qual research, some quantitative research, really to unpick, well, what wasn't working, because we could see a lot of that from ourselves, but what also was. What were the good things that were coming up? What were the where it was working? What could we learn from that? And then in order to create this alt solution. And so there were 4 different success factors that, out of that kind of golden thread that you've just mentioned of what we were hearing, did apply a really good, that did work, or that were generally, on the whole, really supportive of creating an environment that was creating the best, essentially, opportunity for leadership development. So one was around the immersive experience. Most people will have experienced, whether or not you go for a 3-hour training or a day or a 2-day or a week. Ideally, if you kind of put out your comfort zone, that can really some sort of immersive experience. But not that the immersive experience was then left, that was what I call spaced repetition. So some sort of support, accountability, follow-up, whether or not that's with the line manager, whether or not that's with the facilitator of the course program that you've been on, accountability buddies, whether or not it's with a coach. That's what I ended up doing, was after having gone through so many of these, I was like, you know what, I'm going to invest in a coach myself. And I am going to make sure that I'm not missing out on these opportunities, on the opportunity of putting into practice all of the insights that are coming up in these. I'm going to make the most of this. And what happened when I worked with a coach was just absolutely astronomically incredible, because it's not about the knowledge, it's actually about application of it. And
I think as well, even I remember after we did this research, we then went on another immersive experience at a record in our job, and then and I remember you put in, post that 2 or 3 day experience, you put in I think it was weekly or fortnightly catch-ups, over lunch. And it was an open invite to anyone who was part of the training, probably 4 to 5 people, and it's always, the same 4 to 5 people came every week. But it was incredible. Like it was really, they were the highlights of my week, in terms of being able to reconnect with people from that training and discuss, and also hearing from people who are further along in their journeys as well. We'll come to role models, but so it was something that you led. It wasn't put in by the business, but it wasn't wasn't anything too complicated. It was just, let's catch up, for like half an hour over lunch just to talk how we're going.
Yeah.
On a regular, semi-regular basis, but even that just had such an impact on the impact that the training had. So it didn't have to be anything crazy.
I think what was really great about those sessions, as an example, is that although we'd all taken different insights out of the training, although we were all applying it in very different ways, there was such gold that was shared through the learning. Some people would come, some people were having, when they come back, each fortnight or week, they come back having had, a real success story to share. Some are like, I'm in a real challenge. And there was the support of the group around them and saying, hey, have you tried this? Or have you talked about this? Or can you apply it in this way? And it's sort of helping people get unstuck when they're actually stuck and in the moment, and applying whatever is relevant for them, rather than it just being a cognitive understanding of a really good session that you've enjoyed, but then you're sort of out on your own to go and apply it. And I think there's so much an unreasonable expectation that's put on line managers to be able to support their direct reports after they come out of a training like this, because the line manager wasn't actually part of it. So they're not really best set up to be able to do that. In most cases, they're not set up to do that or supported to do that in any way. It's just an expectation that they will be some form of accountability. And so it puts the onus on the individual to be able to set the line manager up for success about supporting them in that way. And most people aren't gonna take on that role, or don't even know how to take on that role of being like, hey, this is what I've learned, these are my kind of key development points, this was and then feeling comfortable coming to that individual to really work on that specific challenge.
And because and you hit the nail on the head, unless you've been part of the experience itself or the training, it is very hard to then support someone as they're trying to apply the learning. So I think, and whether you've been at a training recently or you just have other people at work who you do connect with, I would really encourage you to put in some regular time. It can be monthly to start off with. Find that support network. If it's one of those things where if you're really busy, it's easy to just be like, oh, I don't have time for this. But then, even if it's just half an hour just to connect, it's just so valuable and kind of, sets you up in the rest of the challenges which you're facing.
100%. So that was that's the second in terms of spaced repetition. The last one was around role models, which we spoke to, James has already spoken to a bit about, but like being able to see it, seeing it in other people is incredibly powerful. Also having champions within the business, whether or not that is the line manager, general manager, whoever it is supporting you to create space in order to apply what you're learning, etc. And then there's this really piece around the taking a more holistic approach, recognizing that who and how we show up at work isn't just a factor of, our works. We're not just one part. Actually, we bring so much more richness when we look at our whole, when we are well in our whole lives, in and out of work. And support around that came up a lot in terms of some of the success factors, as well as the fact that is so individual. It's even more individual based on circumstance as well.
For sure.
Those are the kind of four success factors, which I'm glad we've had a chance to share. My intention then, when I was creating this, was really to build an alt solution that delivered against these four success factors and supported anyone who wanted to lead. And when I think about leadership, I don't just mean my manager. You don't have to have any direct reports. It's anyone who spots or embraces the potential that's within themselves or outside of themselves and leans into courage and dares to essentially tap into that and explore that. I felt like my mission was really to bring that to life, bring this to life.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, like bring it to as like you said before, as many people as possible, like wanting to make sure that, you know, professional development, no matter how well it's done, is not just for the select few, but for everyone. You know, for the people who do have, you know, the passion to grow as individuals, as leaders, like you said, whether they manage people or not, they can still be leaders within the business. And yeah, really opening up those opportunities for everyone.
Yeah. So James chose not to continue on the journey. To be honest, it started off as a kind of small idea when it was just a side hustle. Decided that it got much
and
bigger.
Then all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure if."
Not sure. But I am so enormously grateful to have had James in that initial starting phase around what it got to, you know, in terms of creation, and in my support crew ongoing, as a friend, really to empower me to show up and make this difference that I feel like I'm here for, and that you guys are here for. Anyone who has decided to listen to this lovely conversation is here for, by leaning into the best of themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing to see how it has, you know, evolved. But then, you know, even a few years on, coming back and revisiting and say, okay, actually, no, what you have built and continue to build with Popp is still very true to yourself and to your why. It is true to the heart you had when you first started, and the passion of, you know, of this, you know, gap you saw, or this, you know, massive need you saw. And so, yeah, even as it continues to evolve and iterate, it's amazing to see that you are just living your why, and really that remains at the heart of the business as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to help more and more people do, is to lean in and understand at a very deep level who they are and what they want and what that looks like, so that they're able to, in whatever way it shapes up for them, they're able to live from that place of internal self-leadership, and make the difference that they're here for.
Definitely. See, I'm very proud of you. We made it through with no formal structure.
Made it through with no formal structure.
With no formal plan. Well, a broad plan. But yeah, hopefully you guys kind of found it interesting to kind of hear how it all began. I think maybe, yeah, for some of you, it might kind of kind of like put a few pieces together. I was like, oh, that's why you know, Chloe does this, or yeah, I think gives a little bit more context as well. But I think most importantly shows people just why this whole you know, passion and business started, and kind of, you know, I think really you know, hopefully no matter what stage you're on in the journey as well, you can identify with what we've spoken about today, in terms of, you know, finding your true passion and your why, trying to make a difference in the world, no matter, you know, if that is starting your own company, or it became clear to me that it was, okay, I'm going to try and do this, you know, try and make a difference in my everyday life and in my career as well. Like it can be in many different ways.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. Thanks
much
for nudging me into doing this.
Getting
outside my comfort zone. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you soon. So, welcome back. I hope you found that conversation with James as interesting to watch as it was fun to film. Though that interview is almost a year old now, it shows just how all of this started. Unlike many entrepreneurs, I'm not one to recommend starting your own business, though what I do recommend to anyone and everyone who wants to live a life of meaning filled with purpose is to create space to find your why. James is the perfect example of that, though he chose not to join me in the journey of building Popp into what it is today. Knowing his why has transformed the way he shows up in his life and work and as a leader. In his words, it was the light bulb that helped him understand himself better. This is why, whenever I'm asked by leaders and teams to help them find their why, I literally jump at the chance. And you know what? Offsite's the perfect moments to do exactly that. So if you would like to learn more, I'll share links below, but I want to know in the comments, would you like to hear more about finding your why? And I can create more videos on that. Hopefully this has been an inspiration for how you can use your next team event to gain the offsite advantage. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next time.